Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to NUPI. It's my great pleasure to invite you to this breakfast seminar on European leadership in a time of crisis. I believe most of us agree that Europe is at a critical stage in time. It's facing a set of challenges that are both internal, such as the future of membership of Greece, UK, and many other countries in Europe. Europe also facing some deep challenges from the external perspective. If you look north, if you look east, if you look south, even if we look west. Europe, I think if Europe is to cope with these challenges, European leaders have to find a way of both connecting to its citizens, but at the same time make reforms so that Europe is fit for purpose. Failure to demonstrate this leadership can lead to a crisis of legitimacy and a crisis of effectiveness. Europe needs to break this vicious circle. Now, it's a great honor for me and a privilege to welcome to NUPI one of the prominent European leaders, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs, who also holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Two of the top priorities of the Latvian presidency are strengthening growth and competitiveness in Europe and strengthening EU as a global actor. Also developing a new EU security strategy. Today he will address the issue of European leadership in these testing times. So it's a great honor for us. Not only do we have one prominent European leader here with us today, we have two. So let me therefore also welcome the Norwegian EU EEA Minister, Vidar Helgesen. Before starting this seminar, let me just give some brief practical information. First, this meeting is actually streamed online and made available to everybody in the world, so take note of that. The two speakers will make their presentations, and then they will be invited to sit in these chairs and to engage in a Q&A. The final point is that we are running on a tight schedule today because they are busy people, so we have to close this session at 9:55 at the latest. So with those remarks in mind, please, I will give the floor to the Norwegian EU EEA Minister Vidar Helgesen, who has accepted very kindly to introduce Minister Rinkēvičs. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ulf, and good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to have with us not only the Foreign Minister of Latvia being in the entourage of his president during this state visit, but as Foreign Minister of Latvia also the presidency of the European Union. And when we were discussing the title of this session today, it seems evident to me that Edgars is representing the European leadership dimension. Whether Norway is representing the crisis dimension remains to be seen, even if we have our discussions about the Norwegian financial mechanism and the Norway EEA grants. I think that is still one of the lesser problems of presidency of the European Union. Europe is indeed faced with significant challenges. To the south, a belt of instability. We saw what happened in even the most promising country in North Africa yesterday, in Tunisia. Few would be better able to address the new and far more dangerous situation to the east than a Latvian foreign minister. Europe is also facing challenges to the west, the looming question of what the UK will do following the elections this spring. But there are also promises to the West in the TTIP negotiations and the opportunity and prospects for revitalizing transatlantic cooperation. But as we see the TTIP negotiations unfold and as we see the public debates around Europe, that too is an issue demanding European leadership. We're faced with all these challenges. Europe is also at the same time facing significant internal challenges, economic problems, that have translated into social problems and that have translated into political extremism and disturbing political developments in many European countries. And we're also seeing how some of these political elements are fishing in murky waters, whether it's relating to the situation south of Europe or to the east. So there is a holistic complex of challenges facing Europe. The EU as a body is under challenge, but it has also, over the last year, I think, demonstrated more unity than many of us would have guessed a year ago. For Norway, it's obviously quite a challenge that, faced with aggression by our largest neighboring country, much of the discussion about the Western response to that situation now takes place in the European Union. When security was last a big issue in Europe, NATO was really the table that mattered. NATO still matters. NATO is still our ultimate security guarantee. It's a very important backer of EU diplomatic efforts as well. But more and more of the political deliberations, the ongoing calibration of European policy and between Europe and the US on these critical challenges now take place around the European Union table, and we're not at the table when decisions greatly affecting us and our security are being discussed. So evidently, in that context, it is also of great importance for Norway, not only to have the EEA agreement as our economic lifeline to the single market, but also to increase and step up our engagement with the EU in the area of foreign and security and defense policy, which is also an added reason why having Edgars Rinkēvičs here during the EU presidency is a great opportunity. Mr. Rinkēvičs has been a prominent figure, not only in his own country, but in Europe since he entered politics at the end of the 1990s, a time of profound change. And in the current critical situation in Europe, I really look forward to hear Edgars' perspectives on the European role and the need for European leadership in addressing these challenges. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Now I have to switch the microphone. Thank you very much, Vidar. And actually, I think you have already covered all the issues. We can really go to Q&A. You have outlined some of challenges the European Union is facing and some of issues that actually Latvia as a presidency has to deal. But first of all, let me just say that I'm very happy that I'm here today, actually as a part of the state visit of the President of Latvia. During our presidency, I think that this visit also outlines really very good bilateral ties we have when it comes to political dialogue, when it comes to security. Our soldiers have served together in Afghanistan, in some other NATO-led missions, and also our cultural economic ties are actually expanding. So this is a great opportunity also to celebrate and to have a symbolism addressing our bilateral issues. Also, it's quite a change if I look back at the history, even 30 years history. Nobody would imagine that the Baltic states would become members of both North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Union, and that actually I will be addressing some of issues that are related to the presidency. The Baltics, as the former Swedish Prime Minister Carl Bildt put it in 1994, were the kind of litmus test in 1990s for Europe, for the Western world, when we were debating our integration in NATO, in European Union. And actually, I believe that back in 1990s, then European Economic Community, or European communities and European Union and also NATO passed this test. To some extent, with changing geopolitical situation, with revisionist Russia, with turmoil that has now started in Europe, to some extent, we are becoming another litmus test now for the credibility of, first of all, NATO, and also for actually the efficiency of the European Union. So this is quite a challenging time when Latvia has taken the presidency of the European Union, and I have to say that I wouldn't imagine when we started preparations for the presidency 2.5 years ago that we are going to face such a challenging environment, both internally in Europe, but also externally. And as we speak today, the European Council, heads of state and government, will already take some very important decisions on two key issues, two key presidency priorities. They will address the development of energy union, the subject we were discussing yesterday during meetings with the Prime Minister of Norway, with my colleagues, both foreign and EU ministers, is also very important here in this country. And also they will endorse strategic investment fund, or so-called President Juncker's initiative, that is supposed to give a boost to European economy. So I'm very happy that issues that are related to competitiveness, to development of EU are moving quite well. I don't go into details. I'm very happy to address those issues during questions and answers. What I want actually to do is to outline some of key challenges we are facing when it comes to what has been referred strengthening EU's global and regional role, strengthening the security. And also what we, as the presidency, in close cooperation with the President of European Council and High Representative on Foreign Policy, because when it comes to EU foreign policy, the lead is in the hands of High Representative, supported by the presidency, by all member states. But as we work very closely with Federica Mogherini, High Representative on Foreign and Security Policy, I will just address some of key issues. As I said, we have actually in unprecedented geopolitical situation. Ukraine, annexation of Crimea, Russia's aggression in the east of Ukraine, support to separatists, but also direct military involvement has shown that actually we as Europe are, and not only we as a Europe, but also the global order has been challenged. And we are still, I think, all of us in the European Union, but also in NATO, are trying to understand what could be the best response. This issue is still an open issue. We have spent a lot of time at the EU Foreign Ministers meeting debating what our strategy should be vis-à-vis this unprecedented situation vis-à-vis Russia. And I believe that at the end of the day we will come up with this strategy which will contain two elements. One is where necessary actually containment of Russia, and another is where necessary actually also trying to engage in political dialogue, trying to push the agenda that we are pursuing. But we have very, very troubling eastern neighborhood, as we have seen. But I have to say that also since 2011 particularly, the southern neighborhood of the European Union is as troubling as well. We know what's happening right now in Libya. Yesterday's terrorist attack in Syria, while there, as far as I have been following news, while there has not been any formal claim who was responsible, but wide suspicions that there is Islamic State behind the yesterday's terrorist attacks, shows that actually we have also a very, very troubling situation with terrorism in North Africa, in Mediterranean region as well. We have fight against ISIS, we have Middle East peace process, we have also unprecedented flow of migrants crossing Mediterranean Sea, and also challenging our security at our southern borders. Internally, much has been already said about the economic situation, I just want also to refer to internal problems that we are now facing with terror acts, especially after Paris and Copenhagen, the need to address also those issues. So we have many fronts open, and as a presidency we try to push for many initiatives at the same time. Passenger name register, creating toolbox to address also external dimension to fight against terrorism. And actually what I see, and I hope and believe, is that we will be able to end our presidency at the European Council with the formal decision to launch the review of EU's security strategy in June. That's an idea that is proposed by High Representative Federica Mogherini, and we believe that we need to have the EU's security strategy review as soon as possible to address the current challenges, because the old strategies that has been adopted in 2003 starts with the words, and I often quote those words because they are really great, that Europe has never been so prosperous, at peace and secure and stable as in 2003. What we see now is just the opposite. Our key challenge, actually, what we are going to address during that review is whether we are speaking about really security strategy or EU's foreign policy strategy. That's going to be the issue number one. I do believe that we have to take a broader look and we have to address security strategy at its external dimension, but also we have to work out, and we have been preparing also some kind of internal dimension, issues that are related with extremism, terrorism, fight against radical movements, also strategic communications with our own citizens, because as we see, there are growing numbers of people, so-called foreign terrorist fighters, leaving European Union, going to Syria, going to Iraq, fighting as part of ISIS, and coming back and creating challenges. By the way, the same is going to happen also with those who are going to eastern Ukraine, fighting in Donbass, and they are also coming back. So we have to address also such issues internally. On external front, I think that key challenge what we are facing when we discuss issues at Foreign Affairs Council, that we still, as the European Union, sometimes do not share the same threat and risk assessment. If you speak with countries from Eastern and Central Europe, members of European Union, you will always hear a lot about Ukraine, about Eastern Partnership, the need to strengthen support for our Eastern partners, to contain Russia, and I'm definitely for it. If you speak with Southern members, of course, the issues number one are the ones I've just mentioned: Libya, migration, terrorism, and we are right. So we have to find the balanced way and balanced approach, because if we're going to have a split at some point, and there are always journalists writing before and after every European Foreign Affairs Council, just judging from what that or another minister has said at the doorsteps, there is again split in the European Union. When we come together and when we sit for 8 to 12 hours in the windowless room, at the end of the day we come out united when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. We have even had a situation that, and we follow the Twitter, we follow the Facebook, we follow social media, that we read Brussels-based journalists already tweeting, foreign ministers decided that and this, while we are still not even started the debate. So this is also the issue that we have to be very careful if sometimes you see different opinions before Council, but then we manage to have also some common approach. So, but if there is going to be a split, then at some point on some issues, and this is because we still have to work out, first of all, the common risk assessment to both, to our eastern and southern neighborhood. Second, we still are addressing issues that are related to the kind of balance between national foreign policies and EU's foreign policy. I think one of the best examples where we still have to address issues is Middle East peace process. We have never had the united EU approach because there are three groups of countries, one taking more the kind of, I would say, position that we have to be more supportive of Palestinian authority and others, that of Israel, and then there is a group of countries that think that we really need to have more balance, and we have not managed to agree on upgrade of Palestinian Authority status back in 2012 when it was discussed at the United Nations General Assembly and so on. We have Normandy format, where EU foreign policy currently is not present, but we have endorsed Germany and France to do their best to address situation in eastern Ukraine, to address situation on Minsk agreements, and that's being coordinated also very closely with High Representative, with EU member states. But at the same time, a key challenge still is there. We still have this uncertainty on right balance, how to address foreign policy challenges from national and EU perspective. Then, of course, we have to address the new phenomenon we have seen, so-called hybrid warfare. That is not a military threat so much as the information, propaganda. Also, I already mentioned strategic communication. It goes both ways. It goes to challenges posed by extremist movements, terrorists, but also it goes to unprecedented propaganda coming from Russia, actually influencing also communities, Russian communities within the European Union. And of course, we are now in the process of reviewing our neighborhood policies. We have Eastern Partnership. Riga is going to host in May Eastern Partnership Summit, where we are going to address situation in Ukraine, how EU can best support Ukrainian reform process, how EU can put substantial aid package not only to Ukraine but also to those two countries like Moldova and Georgia that have signed association agreements and free trade agreements with EU, having of course been also punished by Russian Federation, how we can assist them in the implementation of this free trade agreement, how we can encourage them dealing with reforms. It's also about more differentiation with all 6 partner nations, actually according to their ambitions. And of course, the key issue will be for us to decide as the European Union how far we are going to reach, at least for a number of years, out to Eastern partners, and what could be the political message EU is sending to Eastern Partnership. I believe that we have to strongly reaffirm our commitment to support those partners that want to be closer to Europe, that want to actually introduce and continue developing their countries as actually part of community of our values. At the same time, it's not going to be easy because we cannot offer at this time, because we don't have, first of all, agreement internally within the EU, but also because those countries are not yet ready. The kind of European perspective the European Union was offering to Western Balkans, and actually it was, to some extent, stabilizing aspect here. But I believe that we cannot, and we will not shut the doors. We still have Article 49 in European Treaty saying that any European country can join if it is fit to join and if there is agreement, and that we have to actually put the kind of clear message that, let's say, association agreements are not the final step in relations between those countries like Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine and European Union. On the south, we don't have even such a format as Eastern Partnership. We don't have summits. We don't have, let's say, kind of broader framework, but we still have to address a lot of challenges when it comes to individual countries. We are currently debating Libya, whether we can put also our CSDP instrument in place to send a military mission or not. That's not going to be the case for time being, because still we need the political agreement between those two, let's say, governments reached, and situation has to be improved. But still, obviously, we also have to have to address challenges in our southern neighborhood in also a more differentiated way and more individually. And of course, the overall and overarching, I think, principle for our neighborhood policy is to do our best to address some root causes that are causing challenges also to European Union, and not only to European Union, but also to globe, by addressing root causes of terrorism, migration, also, as I said, contain some aggressive countries somewhere in our own neighborhood. So there are so many challenges, and there are very limited resources. And that's going to be quite a challenge, how you can put the right tools in place. We have 3 actually tools in our toolbox that can be used effectively. That's a development aid. EU is still the largest provider of development aid, and as a presidency we are currently leading the process of the preparation for United Nations General Assembly and the high-level meeting on post-2015 development aids. But I think also that we have to be more efficient when we use that money, and also we should demand more. We have our common security and defense policy. Well, I have to say, still NATO is in the lead, and while still we are fighting with defense budgets with proper resources, and actually due to economic crisis those are shrinking, we also see that we are actually in the need to have also our European let's say military toolbox ready. And of course we have tools that have been already used quite extensively, but they work, and that's of course overall economic relations, also including such things as sanctions. So from that point of view, I would say that our current goal as a presidency is first of all to do our best to prepare the review of security strategy first. Second, to address neighborhood policy challenges and to prepare the new strategy for that. That will continue during the presidency of Luxembourg. And also to address issues that actually strengthens EU itself, both from economic point of view. I already mentioned at the beginning those 2 decisions that are going to be endorsed today, as well as to look how we can best address situation with the greatest challenger of post-Cold War order, Russia. And I'm not mentioning deliberately some other issues, minor issues like Greece and the United Kingdom and what we are going to do with that. You know, the only thing I can say now already, almost having spent almost 3 months actually in this role, that when you wake up in the morning, you don't know what kind of issues you are going to face throughout the day and what's going to be your immediate problem. For instance, last week we were dealing extensively with Iceland and the candidate country status of Iceland. Today we will be dealing with something else, and that's probably the major challenge that we still also need to strengthen our own internal institutional framework, also to strengthen and to develop ways how we are working. I'll stop here. Sorry, I was too long, but I'll be very gladly answering questions and engaging in some issues that I haven't mentioned, but that are definitely on my mind if you ask.
Thank you very much for this interesting exposition. I don't think you should expect that Norwegian membership to the EU will burden your agenda rapidly. So if there's one issue that will not be on your agenda very rapidly.
You know what? I always try to invite Sweden and Finland to NATO, but now I will be trying to invite Norway into EU. Thank you for giving me another policy agenda.
No, this was an issue not probably on the next few weeks, but thank you so much. Now we open the floor for discussion. Liv, do you have a microphone? So there's some. Please indicate your name and then please be brief.
Thank you. Pia Isakseter. I'm a political scientist, but I'm also a member of the Norwegian Conservative Party because, as General de Gaulle said, politics is far too important to be left to the politicians. Although educated and specialist on European integration, I have mainly worked representing Norway in NATO, a couple of times also in the EU. And I do not believe in the EU as an actor that I would trust the security of my country with. If you had to choose between NATO and the EU taking care of your security, which would you choose? Thanks.
Do we take more?
Yuri Mihalenko, TASS Newswire Agency of Russia. A question for the Latvian Foreign Minister, Mr. Rinkēvičs. Can you share your vision of the future of Russian-Latvian relations and express Latvia's stand on EU's sanction policy and its effectiveness so far? Thank you.
Okay, the first question, if I have to choose, my answer is I choose both, still. But because I do believe that both NATO and the EU are very complementary. Of course, NATO is about the hard security. It's about Article 5, it's about defense of one is defense of all. But also we see that the current situation, the challenges of 21st century also address the core issue of how you apply Article 5 when you don't have this kind of, clear military threat, but you have the hybrid warfare, you have the so-called green man phenomenon, and so on. So from that point of view, also NATO is, let's say, addressing the challenges in the 21st century, being cybersecurity, being information warfare. We in Riga have established NATO Center of Excellence for Strategic Communication, and so on. So, but that's still about hard security. EU has been actually much better and great to provide also many elements of soft security. In Latvia we were debating a lot about joining Eurozone. The general public was against up till the very day we introduced Euro in 2014. And we had some national sentiment, we have very nice currency, actually much nicer than current Euro notes and so on. There was national sentiment involved. As Ukrainian situation developed, as we have seen also what's now happening with currency of our neighboring states, all of suddenly there are people who are saying, thanks God we are in Euro. We have one issue of financial security addressed, economic security addressed. We still are facing challenge that we are working with the EU, which is important challenge, energy independence, also alternative supplies, because we are still dependent 100%, almost 100% after Lithuania has now national LNG. It's a bit lesser issue, but still there is a heavily dependence on one supplier from Russia on gas and so on. So those issues are as important as any of hard security. So both organizations have been complementary, and I'm actually very glad that we have been able to jump the train, probably even the last car of the train back in 2002, 2004, joining both organizations. And even if there are sometimes, of course, speculations that the Baltics are going to be next on the agenda of invading and so on, I still think that we are in a situation where I could say we are in unprecedented security and the best arrangement one can get in 21st century, even if nobody is perfect. But NATO and the EU is as perfect as you can get.
Before, could Vidar, because you wanted to jump in
Sure, sorry.
On the same topic.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to briefly say that I would never trade NATO for the European Union on Norway's national security interests. But that's also not the issue. I mean, the issue for Europe is what Edgars has just said. It's about having a comprehensive approach. And for Norway, with the transatlantic alliance being our security guarantee, we should also listen to the voices coming out of Washington, which are very clearly that a stronger European Union, stronger European defense capacities, including stronger defense coordination within the EU, would be a good thing for NATO as well. So it's absolutely not an either-or for Europe. For Norway, it's an either, but that's the current case.
But whenever you decide to start accession process to EU, you are welcome.
Okay. And then the sanctions.
Yeah. On the two questions related to, first of all, Russia-Latvia relations. Look, I think, and I have also stated that many times, including also when I was meeting Russian foreign minister in January in Moscow, that our bilateral relations really very much depend on implementation of Minsk agreements, resolution of situation in Ukraine. Unfortunately, what has been done a year ago, and what I can stress, illegal annexation of Crimea, also the behavior of Russia in relation to eastern Ukraine, have created very serious problems, long-term problems in relations between EU, Russia, and Russia, and most notably also our bilateral relations. At the same time, we are neighbors, and there will be always issues we have to address. So from that point of view, I think we had quite good exchange on a number of topics. There will be principled differences, but I do believe that the key actually to the overall relations between any of EU member state and Russia depends on the situation I have said. On sanctions, also I want to reiterate our stance that my belief is that sanctions do work, and I think that we have seen that there is some value of sanctions in containing a situation from further development. I don't believe that Minsk agreements would be possible if we wouldn't impose sanctions, but at the same time, I also want to state that sanctions are not the goal per se. If situation improves in Ukraine, if Minsk agreements are being implemented, we will be advocating for softening or lifting sanctions. If we are seeing a further deterioration of situation, I don't know, attack against some cities like Mariupol, or some unrest in Odessa or Kharkiv, or whatever, non-compliance with Minsk agreements, we can talk also, and we will be talking about the imposition of new sanctions. But again, I do want to stress that we want to see Minsk agreements being implemented. I have to say that we see some positive signs. Ceasefire, although violated, but is there. We see also withdrawal of military equipment. We would like to see it being done more quickly than it's being conducted, and we reiterate that both sides should comply with Minsk agreements. So a lot still depends on further elements of Minsk agreement. So from that point of view, I don't expect any new sanctions today or tomorrow at the European Council. That's not on the agenda. We have time. We very much support Normandy format, but also we should understand that if things are not going to change, then if political process is not going to yield results, then, well, we are open to all options.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then it's question please there, and then over there. Please be brief.
Thank you, sir. I work here at the Institute. If I might follow up on the same topic. You say the sanctions work. Yes, I guess they do to some extent, but at the same time, nobody expects big policy changes from Moscow. Sorry. And at the same time, we had the Minsk agreement and all that. But would you agree with me that actually the center of gravity in the conflict is actually in Kiev, not in Donbass or not in Moscow. It's all about making sure that Kiev and the rest of Ukraine kind of develops in a Western way, if you like, or follow our values. And if that's the case, do we do enough? I worked many years in the Balkans, and I know that reforms take a long time and it's difficult, although even if you have an EU carrot future membership in front of you. So have you realized that to enough extent that this is really what's needed to help Kiev reform in a democratic way? Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Minister, for spending time with us this morning. I'm Henrik Seip of Eastern Europe Group, a consultancy. My question is a follow-up, I guess, to what Karsten just asked, because I also want to know about your views on the Eastern Partnership. You made several references, of course, to Ukraine and also to Georgia and Moldova. You pointed out that there are currently obstacles to membership for these three countries. But what would be your timeline with regard to membership? I mean, would it be in our lifetimes? We have seen in the case of Turkey that eternal candidacy does not win people over, on the contrary.
One more or?
No,
Okay,
if
okay.
you can respond to this. Vidar, if you would like to jump in, please indicate to me.
Sure. Well, first of all, yes, I do agree with you that this is not about Eastern Ukraine, it's about Ukraine. And it's about the kind of policy of spheres of influence and maybe even the creation of some kind of greater empire, or whatever we call it. That's one. Second, do we do enough? No, we don't. And that's why I'm referring that we need to prepare a robust program of assistance to all three, not only Ukraine, but to all three countries that have signed association agreements. It has to include not only financial aspect. Yes, we have to provide money for addressing immediate problems that Ukraine is facing. It has to include also the substantial dialogue and cooperation on energy issues, very important for all three countries, particularly Ukraine and Moldova. And by the way, we are doing also very good things. We shouldn't be also so self-critical. For instance, there is a pipeline now from Romania to Moldova, which should be extended to Chisinau, but still actually making Moldova less vulnerable to challenges in energy sector. We have interconnector between Slovakia and Ukraine, not providing, of course, Ukraine with full alternative, but already creating some issues. So that's another thing. Expert assistance in many fields. That's also true. But there is also one thing I want to stress. Reforms can be done only by Ukraine. EU, Norway, United States, Canada, any of great friends of Ukraine cannot do things instead of government, period. If they don't do reforms, if they don't pursue reform process, nobody will. And here, of course, we also want to see that reforms are going to be implemented. And it's not for the sake of EU membership, it's for the sake of the Ukraine itself. By the way, back in 1990s, we were referring to politicians that shouldn't be trusted, politics and some reference to Charles de Gaulle. I have to say that back in 1990s, many of Latvian politicians were justifying some very painful reforms that Brussels demand reform process. And we are still paying some price for this very short-sighted approach that it's not my responsibility, somebody else wants me to do. That's a very dangerous path. It's actually about future of Ukraine first, not about demands from somebody else. And of course, I think that Ukraine is going to fail if it's not going to address two key issues. One is corruption, and second is certainly also the change of the governance, let's say so. But that's really their decision, not ours. About Eastern Partnership, about membership perspective. As I stressed, we have still Article 49 in treaties about about whether there is a kind of timeline. I don't want to speculate on timelines right now. I want to say that first of all, there are still many things any country that wants to join European Union right now, be it country of Eastern Partnership or those countries that are already having accession talks in Western Balkans, they are enormous amount of work that has to be done still ahead. Whether that's going to be our lifetime, it depends on life expectancy, actually. That's one thing. And second, I do agree that we cannot fool also any of potential candidates or any of partners like we have done with Turkey. If we cannot provide credibility, then let's not create another trouble here. But at the same time, I do believe that we cannot deny any country the right to join European Union just because there is a kind of third country putting veto because they don't like something. So I would still advocate that we have to keep the door open. We have to have the roadmap, and we have to state that we are developing relations, but we all should understand that this is not going to be a short process.
Okay, we still have the time for 2 quick questions. So first over here, please, and then but please be...
Thank you. Elita Tsakula. I represent Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Government and Latvian National. My question is concerning the assistance to Eastern Partnership countries, as you mentioned, both from EU side, from Latvia side, and as we work a lot with these countries, also in local government sector and reforms, what could be assistance from Latvian side to the reform processes in these countries, and whether it could also be a coordinated, some kind of assistance, Norwegian, Latvian, or Nordic Baltic assistance? Thank you.
A question to broaden the debate to the reshaping of global geopolitics, because the solutions with respect to Russia are embedded in a global context where the attitudes of Asia and other players matter. So Europe is, or EU is negotiating the TTIP with the USA. For the USA, TTIP is part of a broader geopolitical perspective where TPP with Asia is also an important element. The European policies towards Asia have been less proactive, you could say, although of course there are important things going on. But in recent days we had the signals that major European countries would support the new infrastructure development bank in Asia, whereas the US would be more reluctant because relating to the role of China, etc. Is this a signal of a more proactive European policies towards Asia?
I want to thank actually Vidar for mentioning TTIP, and I skipped that part, but it doesn't mean that it is not something that we are not looking at. Actually, we are, and next week I'm hosting informal foreign trade ministers meeting of EU in Riga, where we are going to discuss how to proceed and how to be, let's say, more ambitious and more proactive, because I absolutely agree with you that it's not only about economic benefit, it's also about the larger geopolitical context. So from that point of view, I think that both United States and European Union are equally interested to have this. It's also going to be quite a boost for trade and economic growth. There are different figures, but our estimation is that the GDP should raise on average in European Union and also to some member states up to 4%, which is quite a number nowadays. And also this is forming a very strong bond when it comes not only to security relations, what we have through NATO, but also on economic front. On Asia, yes, I don't want to leave the impression that Asia is less important to European Union, but we are here in this situation where we are negotiating free trade agreements, we call them differently with every nation for years, trying to push for kind of more coordinated approach. First of all, for instance, we have long discussions with Japan, with India, with some ASEAN nations, and there are obviously many challenges because nobody wants to give in. So from that point of view, I do want to stress that we see both equally important. Second, on assistance, I can say that we are providing bilateral assistance to countries like Georgia, Moldova, also Ukraine, basically on issues that are related with, for instance, in Moldova, with judicial reform. In Ukraine, we are going to have some number of projects when it comes to anti-corruption, when it comes to governance issues, and so on. So I don't want to get into details. I understand time is also short, and unfortunately, President is not going to wait for me. That's usually the other way around. But we just discussed yesterday with both my colleagues, with Vidar and with Børge, the need to coordinate more at the level of Nordic Baltic, as well as to have more coordination at the level EU Norway. And I want to really say that we very value the assistance Norway is providing to Eastern partner countries, and I know that there is going to be also new initiatives and actually doubling of assistance also to Ukraine, as I was informed yesterday. So we believe that we have to establish the framework where also those who are outside of the European Union can contribute, coordinate, and to have a kind of stakeholding also in the whole process. But here we do need to coordinate. We understand that, and we are ready to do it at both formats, Nordic Baltic and the UNE. But here I have to say that Norway has done really excellent work, and we very much appreciate when it comes to assistance to Eastern partners. And at the end, just to close, also, we have a very strong security bond, and we very much appreciate also Norway's contribution to reassurance policies in the Baltics. With those words, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me also take this opportunity to thank you so much for spending time with us this morning, and hopefully we'll catch you both. Thank you.